ask people what life is better, the middle class life or the millionaire life, 99.9 all say, I like it better being a millionaire. I saw my parents struggle with money. And I thought to myself, there's got to be a better way. The first way that I became an investment millionaire, I chose to put in $100,000. Within a couple years, actually, it may have been 7, 8 years, that 100,000 grew to $1 million. You just want to find someone one step ahead of you who has been to the place you want to go and has come back and can tell you about it. Whether you feel like you're good with money, not good with money, starting today, think of yourself as the CEO of your life.
Welcome back to another go-round worth of Masters of the Market. This week, I could not be more delighted to have on with me Derrick Kinney, a one-of-a-kind individual to join us on Masters of the Market to talk about everything that you need to know about investing from start to finish. I want to go ahead and pass you the first question here, which is what exactly is your story and how'd you get to where you are today?
Well, all right, first of all, thank you for having me. And it truly was a chance meeting, but I really feel like it was kind of a God-led meeting for you and I to connect in the airport of all things as we're flying to FinCon. It was a crazy story, but that's how great relationships form, is in the crazy stories, right? And I love it. So I was 24 years old, but I had a problem. I looked like I was 13. And that's when I became a financial advisor. I asked myself, who in the world would work with a baby face like this? But I had a passion for supporting local education and investing in young people. And I saw my parents struggle with money. And I saw my parents' friends struggle with money. And I thought to myself, there's got to be a better way. People are working hard. People are working at jobs they mostly don't even like to provide for their family, give them a better life. And I thought, I want to be part of the change. I want to help people who, if they're making good money and feel like they're falling behind, how do we get them on track? And then also people who feel like they're not making good money and they wonder, what does everybody else know that I don't? I want to give them the roadmap to do that. And so I became a financial advisor basically out of my own pain, wanting to build wealth and help others build wealth. And then I realized this actually pays pretty well. And what I realized was people are basically buying trust. Yes, they're buying access to your information to get better returns and make money, but what they want is a relationship. And so what I began to do is just craft a business all around walking alongside people through all of life's key decisions, whether it was their first home, even getting into their first apartment, their first child, their first job, their first 401k, all these firsts that they just weren't prepared for. And I was simply one step ahead of them. And so that's really my story, is I wanted to help people, but then I realized, and someone once told me that if you want to do good in the world, you need to make money to be able to do the most good. And so my motivation became, how do I tie a cause to cash and money to meaning and purpose to profits, and really build a booming business so that I could give back and really impact some of the causes I care about and impact people's lives financially. So they went from middle class to millionaire. And what I find is, this sounds kind of funny, Ari, but when I ask people what life is better, the middle class life or the millionaire life, 99.9 all say, I like it better being a millionaire.
I could surely relate to that answer.
Right.
Who wouldn't? Derrick, I want to throw you in the hot seat real quick. There's so many people out there who would say that, financial advisors, I can't deal with them. I can't trust them. And there's this stigma around financial advisors for the most part. Definitely as I'm creating more content on YouTube and talking to more folks, what would you say is like the primary reason for that stigma? And how would we come around to trusting an advisor if we're just getting started with investing? Like, how do we know who to trust?
Well, one of the questions I ask people is, if you're in a social setting and you're a financial advisor and someone asks you, what do you do for a living? And you say, I'm a financial advisor. That's the response. You get people's eyes glazing over. They step backwards. They mutter something under their breath like, well, I already have all the insurance I need. My mom lost a lot of money with somebody like you. And so what I would tell people is, don't fight perception. just embrace perception like the next door neighbor that you don't always like to talk to, but they're going to be there day in and day out, whether you like them or not. And so the perception is if people feel like that, then you've got to do something different. And one of the things I find, I just actually did a piece of content on this last week. I was at an event and a gentleman walks up and says, "Hey, Derrick, I follow your LinkedIn, your Instagram content. You need to produce a video on how to pick a financial advisor." And I said, "Why?" And he said, because people don't know what advisor is best for them. And he tells me a story about how he started off with his advisor, no money, helping build wealth. Well, then the company he worked with went public. He has a lot of options and stock and much more complicated situation now. And he's questioning, is my advisor still the right person for my current version of me? I thought, what a great comment. So I filmed this video, and basically what I came to was, I call it the recent and relevant rule. And that is, when you talk to an advisor, simply ask them, tell me about a client that has the same goals and the same fears and problems I have right now. What did you do to help them? Describe the situation, and what was the outcome? And you begin to have that advisor tell you either point blank, here's a client just like you, who I'm working with, who I'm helping navigate all these unique problems. Or they might say, I really don't have any experience with that at all. Nice person, but that they're not going to be the person to help you get where you want to go. And Ari, I think you'll appreciate this. One of the things I love about your content, I get energized watching your content because you're you. Like I'm Ari. Take me or leave me. It doesn't matter. I'm still going to be the best version of me, and it attracts people to you. So I say that because let's say you set a big goal to climb Mount Kilimanjaro, and you said, man, I've always wanted to climb this mountain. I'm going to train. I'm going to get ready. Would you go and find someone who barely knows any knowledge about climbing a mountain, or would you find the Sherpa who every day successfully takes people who are rookies and takes them to the summit of Mount Kilimanjaro? Well, you would find the person with recent experience taking people to the summit. And by the way, if you are watching this right now and you're thinking, I could start a business, I feel stuck in my job, you just want to find someone one step ahead of you who has been to the place you want to go and has come back and can tell you about it. When you find those people, it's going to short circuit your path to success. And also you're going to reach success a lot quicker, and you're going to be less frustrated, because nothing worse than having a coach or an advisor who's figuring stuff out with you as the guinea pig. It's just not right, and it doesn't have to be that way.
What would you say for the investors who are out there who are like, you know what, I can go to YouTube, I can go to X, I can go to Blossom, and I can find creators or those who are walking this path? Is it more valuable to go with them, or is it in fact worth it to still these days go the advisor route and work with an advisor? Because there's so many people out there, at least I've spoken to, they're nervous. They're very nervous with advisors. And when you go on YouTube and you hear, creators speak, these influencers, we're not necessarily selling anything. We're just sharing a journey. That's also very dangerous, though, because we don't necessarily help that end user, that viewer, realize their own investor profile. We're just showcasing ours.
Yeah, it's interesting. When I was just speaking, for example, to a big group of financial advisors in the room, and I was at another event the week before. And one of the things I told them was, all of you in the room, when you say you're a financial advisor, you know what that means. But outside of this room, most people don't. And you're forcing them to burn their brain cells to figure out what the heck you do. What is a financial advisor? And so instead, what I say is you want to connect with an instantly relatable problem. So let me give you an example. All right, let's say that you and I are talking, and I say to you, Ari, you know how it feels like when you take your car to the mechanic? It often feels like you're getting taken advantage of or overcharged.
Hate going there.
You're like, yeah, I get that. Or let's say that two moms are talking and they each have a teenage daughter. And one mom says to the other mom, hey, you know how it feels like when you talk to your daughter, what you say goes in one ear and right out the other? And the mom's going to say, yeah, I get that. So the point is, the biggest problem the financial services industry has created is they have overcomplicated financial services. Money is actually very simple. Good principles, discipline, setting goals, and going into most things like indexes and these things that have the likelihood of beating what most professional fund managers do, that leads to success. But the problem is whether you're an advisor, a content creator, a finfluencer, the problem all of you face is the words you say can help the ideal clients come your way. And that is you want to connect with them with an instantly relatable problem. So for example, if I'm talking to someone who is a young, driven, hungry tech executive right now, who's making really, really good money, I might say something to them like, you know how so many hardworking tech professionals, they make good money, but they worry about their family slipping away and they're not building the complete version of themselves they want? Yeah, we help them fix that. You see, now let me pause there. You see, you're appealing not just to money, but how do people really feel? If they're having a drink of their choice on a Friday night on their back patio, and they're talking to their boyfriend, their girlfriend, their spouse, whoever it is, whatever those emotions that you feel like they're talking about, that's what the successful financial advisor, creator, and influencer needs to be talking about to truly connect with people's pain. I like to say, tech gives you space for more face-to-face. Tech gives you space for more face-to-face. So many people think, well, AI will do all the relationship building I need. I'm not going to need to really be personable and build trust. AI will take care of all that. No, actually, it's the opposite. In the world of high tech, you need to go even more and double down on high touch. And I believe people watching right now, people who may be first-time investors, people who know they're better than what their current paycheck says they are, they feel like, why do other people do better with their money than me? They're going to want people, whether they be the financial advisor, the content creator, the influencer, whoever it is, just somebody who has walked in their shoes a couple steps ahead of them and can come back and tell them, hey, there's a pothole on the road, 1 block up, go left, don't go straight ahead. You see, that type of practical advice is going to help people make money and save more money.
See, Derrick, that's what I love about you. The first time I met you, all the way up until today, when we've been talking, I just across your content. Which, by the way, everybody out there, if you don't follow Derrick, he is literally everywhere and anywhere you can possibly find him. I don't know if there's one place you want to direct people, but I'll put some links down there in the description in the pinned comment. Derrick, let's get right into this here about investing, because you already shared just now that a beginner investor can really keep it really simple. And investing is really that simple. It can come down to an ETF, an index fund, but a lot of investors today like to jump the gun and jump right into individual stocks. So let's just take the avatar of a brand new investor. They're approaching the market. How would you suggest that investor goes about those beginning phases of investing?
Well, one thing I will tell you, and this is where you're going to have to really figure out what's best for you. The beauty of social media, the beauty of Ari, the beauty of me, us talking together, is we're going to give you advice and ideas, but the question is going to be, what is best for you? And you can easily shift strategies. You could probably shift strategies 10 times a day based on content you see, because, hey, that sounds good, that sounds good. So what I did, having been a financial advisor for 25 years, I sold my business a couple years ago. And the reason I did it, Ari, was I saw people struggling. People would pay me good money to help advise them as a fee-based advisor, to help them craft a unique plan for their life and go from middle class to millionaire. And what did that look like for them and their goal path? But what I realized was not everybody had access to that. And so I took the steps, these 5 steps that I helped thousands of people successfully become a millionaire with, and I call it the Millionaire Money Map. And so these 5 steps, now, are they easy? Heck no, they're not easy. You got to put in some work, okay? I'm not going to sugarcoat it. But if you are disciplined and dedicated, you often find if you're going to go on a vacation, you're going to get there quicker if you follow the roadmap. The pilot doesn't just hop in the cockpit and say, well, let's just see where the plane takes us, folks. They know exactly where they're going to go. And so the first step of this is to set goals for what it is that you want. Now, Ari, some of people listening may think, Derrick, that sounds so simple. Look, I've set goals before. Give us some meat here. I thought you were going to bring on a really good guest, Ari. This guy's too simple for us. But when you decide what it is you truly want, it's powerful. Like, I get emotional even thinking about it. And one of the things I think about is the goals that you set right now are going to propel you to get what you want 5 years from now, 10 years from now. Like, literally, and I mean this truthfully because it's happened many times in working with clients, there's often one person in a family that is sort of the change agent that people talk about. They talk about Uncle Tom or Aunt Sally. They did something amazing. This is the chance for you to be that person in your family. But it comes down to asking what it is that you want. And so I like to say set goals in a couple different areas: physical, personal, spiritual, relational, and even a business goal. Okay. Now, where this came about, this is going to sound crazy, but we have 4 kids. My daughters are 26, 24. The boys are 22 and 20. I began to do a family goal setting meeting once a year. Okay. So December 31st, we started this about 15 years ago. Now, Ari, just being honest with you here, my kids hated it. They were like, Dad, what are you doing? You're torturing us. Why make us sit down and write down goals? I've always been a big goal setter, and I saw the results of it. I gave each of my kids a note card. My wife was there as well. I put on some soft Baroque style music in the background to just let that right side of the brain kick in. And here's what I told my kids, and I'm going to tell all of your listeners as well. Right now, you can accomplish anything. You are a blank canvas. Doesn't matter holdbacks, what people have said you're not good at, where you have failed in the past. All of that is off the table. Right now, it's only about possibility and getting you to higher profitability. And so I told the kids, we're just going to focus on your goals. It doesn't matter how realistic they are, what it is that you want. So they write down these goals. Then I had them write down, a year from now, write down your ideal year as though it's already happened. Well, fast forward a year, they put these on their bathroom mirror every day, looked at them and so forth. They achieved a lot of their goals. So next year they brought their friends, and it became more acceptable because now this is kind of a cool thing to do. What I realized was, if you don't have goals for you, life has its own goals for you. And life's goals will push you off the bridge, off the road, off track, and you'll pop up years later wondering, what the heck happened? Where have I been? So what I would tell you is, this is going to sound crazy, but when you write down your goals, now you have purpose. We find people begin making more money, they begin achieving more, they begin having a better quality of life. And also, let's say, for example, one of your goals is, I want to get out of my credit card debt. I've got $10,000 of credit card debt, and my goal is to pay this off in 2 years. Well, we encourage people then to set goals and incentives every quarter. And whether that's the great concert you want to go to, the new coffee shop, go out with a friend, because if you're always living on rice and beans, you are robbing every ounce of joy out of your life, and you will not live the life you want. You're going to be just a crummy person to be around on your pathway to success. And that is not how you get to success. Relationships equal revenue. And when you can build in relationships and have people support and hold you accountable, that's powerful.
Derrick, I'm so happy that you just said that. I've been talking, even here at the conference that I'm at, on the tour with Blossom Social, a lot about what I like to call my quote unquote rich life. And I kind of copped this from Rich Dad, Poor Dad, but Ari Gutman is now living his rich life. And that came after about a decade worth of the rice and beans mentality, and just everything I make into the market, everything I make into savings. Like, nothing was there to actually enjoy. And I do feel like I robbed myself out of about a decade. Now, I look at where I'm at today and everything that I have amounted and what I will retire with, and I'm like, but I want to ask you at what point, because the FIRE movement, retiring early, passive income, these are big terms now. A lot of investors are throwing around, especially the young investors. What would you share with them to keep balance on their life while on this financial freedom journey?
Well, one of the struggles I had personally, and a lot of what I talk about is from my own struggle, is I felt stuck in a dead-end job. So this was the job that my boss would actually email us on a Friday afternoon and say, hey, by the way, tomorrow, Saturday, it's going to be a work day. And I was crushing. I'd have to call my wife. We'd have to cancel all of our plans. And I suspect some people watching right now may feel like they're stuck in cubicle hell right now. They are trapped in a job that they knew, and they know they're better than what's happening to them, but they don't know what to do. And so oftentimes then what they look at when they have that type of thought process, how can I quickly get out of this? How can I jump to immediate success? And oftentimes that's where a problem occurs. And what I would tell people is you want to make just small, simple changes. And one might be, in the next 90 days, I'm going to find a new opportunity. Okay. Well, now there's purpose. Now there's focus on that. And what I would tell people is when you then begin to say, the way I'm going to work out of this is I'm going to make more money, save more money, all of those are great. But if you're solely focused on that, you're going to begin to feel impatient. And this is something I struggled with. So I'm just speaking candidly. And what I realized was when you set goals and you're an A-type personality, very driven, it's the next thing, the next thing. And what I found is I was embarrassed to look in the rearview mirror. I would have a big win, like a really big win. And then in an alarmingly short amount of time, I would forget about it. Like a week later, I feel like I'm a failure again. Like I gotta achieve something huge. And I would just encourage people to, number one, keep a highlight reel. I began doing this when I was younger, and I began to write down on a piece of paper. You could do this on the notes app of your phone or even video yourself. When you have wins, I ate better today when I didn't want to do it. Write that down. I actually had the difficult conversation with someone that I didn't want to have. Write that down. I actually saved at the beginning of the month. I didn't wait until there was more month left than there was money. Write that down. And the whole point is you're building your own highlight reel to remind yourself that you did it once and you can do it again. And that's the point. And when we think about top athletes and top actors and top entertainers, they don't show highlights of the baseball player about to step to the plate for randomness. It's a reminder, look, we're paying you good money and you've done it once and we want you to do it again. They don't show the big highlights on the big screen to not let people know, hey, here's what's happening here. So the whole point is when you can see what you've done in the past, it gives you confidence that you can do it again in the future.
Even if it's someone's first time going through this, like even specific to investing, right? A big problem that a lot of people have is keeping up with investing. You got to have money every week, every month. And when people think about that, some people say they don't have the money to even invest. That means you should probably change some of your habits. But if you find yourself in this situation where you're trying to figure out where to pull the money and you feel stressed or overburdened with that, you're saying this highlight reel would help you overcome that.
Yeah, and one of the things I would tell people is so many people also already feel like that they are locked in at their current salary and they feel stuck. They're in this trap of, well, I've got to settle for this 4% yearly raise, and that's based on if I have good behavior, for goodness sakes. That's the path I'm stuck on. One of the steps in the Millionaire Money Map is to set your yearly income goal. Now, many people never thought about, I can actually control how much money I make? Yes. And the key is asking yourself some really difficult questions. We put together a download called gettheRaiseYouWant.com. And basically it's walking through in your current job, do you have the availability to make more money? For example, if you're a teacher, you're a nurse, you're a pilot, there are certain occupational classes that you could be the best there is, but you are not going to make more money unless everybody gets a pay raise. And then you've got to ask yourself, do I A, love my job enough to stay there? And then B, that means I need to then launch a side hustle to get to my goal. So let's say right now you're making $75,000 a year and your goal is $100,000 a year. Well, now it's no longer an income problem. You have a math problem. $1,000 is the gap that you just have to figure out how to do it. So you may say, I'm going to change jobs to close that gap based on adding more value. And by the way, the way that you truly make more money for the company is ask yourself in your current job, what can I do to help the company make money, save money, and be more productive? When you can answer those three questions and go to your boss and say, look, I love working here. I've come up with a game plan to help us make more money, save more money, be more productive. Over the next 30 days, I like to implement these strategies. And if we have the success I think we will, here's the pre-negotiated raise I want to get. Now, some of you thinking, Derrick, that sounds crazy. I would never do that. What I would tell you is, if you're stuck and you know you're better than what your current paycheck says you are, without doing something drastic, 12 months from now, you'll be complaining, saying the same thing. So is it worth it just taking the risk? And what I would tell you is, even if you don't even come close to achieving the goals, the fact that you said this to your boss and crafted a plan, now your boss, you are working closely together. You're more likely to make more money anyway, just because they're going to say, finally, someone's thinking like an entrepreneur inside of a corporate setting. And then the other piece is launching the side hustle. And so many people get so complicated, Ari. I mean, when I talk to people, they say, Derrick, I've got to go back to school. I've got to get my advanced degree. I've got to get the certification. No, you don't. Here's what you need to do. Ask yourself in your current job, in your current life right now, what do people ask for your help with? Are you the website developer? Are you the closet organizer? Are you the person that teaches young people how to enhance their soccer skills? Are you the vacation planner? You see, all those things that you take for granted that you're just good at, but people ask your help with, now you can press the monetization button. That's where to start. So simply start with where you're good at in your focus group. The people you care about are already telling you, yes, you're adding value. I will pay you for that. Or you could find, here's a problem you want to help solve. But the key is, I like to say, start simple. Ask yourself, what is the easiest way to do this hard thing? That one question has helped save a lot of people a lot of time and make them a lot more money.
Derrick, you're making it hard for a lot of people out there to have excuses. You know, that's the hardest part. When you get someone like Derrick on, I mean, he just takes away all the excuses. And I'm a big fan of what you're saying, especially as someone who had a full-time job and then the side hustle and still kind of down that road as well. It's a lot of hard work, one might think. But in my reality, because I love what I'm doing on both ends, it's actually very easy and it's very fun. So I think, to that end, once you start just doing what you're passionate about, what people are coming to you for, I mean, it's not work at all. And it's going to give you that abundance now of more money to throw into the market. So what do we do from there? Let's say now we're bringing in some more money. And again, we approach the market. I'll tell you right now, the big trend, income investing, people throwing money into these crazy ETFs with these crazy yields. Everybody's trying to retire by tomorrow. Is that feasible? Are we fooling ourselves?
Well, I think it's good to think about how could I retire tomorrow? But there's a problem there, Ari, and with your permission, let me go down that path for just a second. So many people talk about, I want to retire. I'm 25. I want to retire when I'm 30. I'm 35. I want to retire when I'm 40. And all of that sounds great. There's sort of that American dream baked into that, this early retirement. The problem is when you focus on that, a lot of times the purpose and meaning in your life also goes out the window. Because when you're around other people, when you're building, when you're growing, that's where a lot of us find meaning and fulfillment. And so instead, what I would tell people, I don't hear many people at all talking about this, is either stack your retirements or set goals based on this is my long-term path. Because if you're just traveling, which is great, and you're just moving around and just kind of living on the beach and reading books, for some people, that is great. But for most people, they realize about a month in, this isn't what I thought it was going to be. And so instead, what I find is when you can have both and, if you say, I'm going to retire at 30, and then you want to figure out, I'm not just retiring from something, I'm retiring to something. What is that next? What this next decade, what's the theme of this next decade of my life? What do I want to build and grow? And maybe I go into a different field, the whole thing. That way you're growing as a person. But one of the things I think people miss, and this is something I wish I would have learned earlier, and it has held me back, and it's helping me now catch back up, and that is relationships equal revenue. And not just money in the bank, but the relationships you form. Like Ari, you're just an amazing relationship builder. I mean, we wouldn't be having this conversation had we not met literally in the terminal there at the airport. And our dialogue since, you've made my life so much better, literally like in 4 weeks. It's amazing, just amazing gift you have. But I would tell people who also want to build relationships, focus on the relationships. Don't just focus on, I just want to retire and now I'm going to isolate myself. Instead, you want to open yourself to new and expanding opportunities. Because, for example, if I have coffee with a friend and that coffee costs me $4 and it's somebody I respect their business acumen and insight a lot, off that $4 conversation, I might make $40,000. It's happened many, many times in my life. When you are listening and you're engaged, and now it's not just one, but it's 1 + 1 = 3. Because it's you and that person plus your ideas, and you get to those goals a whole lot quicker. So I would just, again, go back to step number 1 of the Millionaire Money Map. What is it that you want? And don't be influenced or pressured by what other people say you should want. What is it that you want? That's really the best life.
I know this feels like such a simple question, but I got to ask it. How do you figure out what you want?
One of the things that I ask myself a lot is, what is a wrong that I want to right? Okay. When I pull up at a stoplight and I see someone with a cardboard sign, I see someone with a cup, I see someone who's looking for a handout, does that still bother me? And if it does, I say to myself, what can I do to help not just this person, but in a bigger scale, what can I do to help solve this problem? And then for me, what happens is I like to make money. Okay. I wrote a book on it, Good Money Revolution, how to make more money to do more good. Even when I was young, the act of making money was fun to me. I call my net worth my report card for adults. I track it every quarter. I just love it. So I don't love money, but I just like making money. And what I realized was it's a tool for me. So for me as an entrepreneur, a business owner, I sold my business a couple of years ago, built one of the top financial planning firms in the country, but I did it to proverbially kind of burn my ships, back myself in the corner and say, Derrick, you did it once. Derrick, can you do it again? And that's the process I'm in now, is I'm in the Derrick, can you do it again phase. And I say that because I think it's inspiring for people to say, Derrick, I feel stuck. I know I'm better than what I'm being told. I know I have more in me, but I don't know what to do with it. And that's where having goals for what it is that you want, then it becomes no longer having to figure out what is it that I want, but now how do I get what I want? And when you write down goals, to your deeper point, Ari, when you feel the emotion in your soul, and when you talk to somebody about your goals and you feel it, like even now I'm flashing back as I'm talking, when I first wrote my goals down, I pictured what ages my kids were going to be 10 years from now. And I picture that if I don't change who Derrick is right now, I will not be the best dad and leader for them 10 years from now. And here's why that matters. About a year or so ago, my daughter said, Dad, you realize that if you didn't start your own business as a financial advisor, then all of us wouldn't have the courage to start our businesses. It hit me like a punch to the stomach. I literally lost my breath. I mean, I knew they had launched, all of our kids have launched their own businesses now, but I didn't connect that because of something I did, it was not more was taught, but more was caught. And then this happened another time. I'm on a Jeep ride with my 22-year-old son, opted not to go to college, just wanted to start his own business. And I said, so Dylan, what are you going to do next? And he said, well, I just want to start something of my own. I want to have my own company. And I just said, why? And what he said next, Ari, shocked me. He said, Dad, it's because that's what we do in our family. We all start our own businesses. And it hit me again. I lost my breath again. And I was like, okay, I didn't realize the impact that a dad, mom, as an entrepreneur, your kids are watching you. And so what I would tell you right now, whether you have kids or not, your friends, the moment you make a courageous, bold move, you ignite not only in yourself, but in the people around and watching you to evaluate themselves and say, if he did it or she did it, could I do it as well? So don't ever think that you're making these bold moves in isolation. People are watching you. Sometimes you'll know soon. Sometimes you'll know later. Sometimes you might never know the impact that your bold, courageous move had on them, also tapping in to their deepest potential.
This is arguably the most powerful, I think, Masters of the Market chat. And I'll tell you why. We're talking about really everything that someone needs to know before they even open up a brokerage account, before they even start to invest. And I'm thinking about, as you're talking, you know, even in my journey, I was investing and throwing money into the market and making money, and it felt good. But here's where I got lost in the sauce, is like, it did come down to like what's it all for? Okay. So you will hit these financial milestones. And I didn't even, by the way, I didn't even celebrate them. I just kept going, you know? So, and I would hit them and the next one, the next one. And it led, candidly speaking, which is why I talk so much about this now, to roads of depression, because it was so purposeless. And I want to ask you with that, do you think this is like the number one problem that investors face, is that like the vast majority of us don't even know really why we're investing, what we're investing for, what we're chasing? I
think that you're holding a hammer right now, Ari, and you're hitting the nail. You know, when I was younger, I took 6 years to finish college. I was 24 when I graduated. I just wanted to make as much money as I could. I wanted to save as much money. I just wanted to shortcut all these pathways to success. And I realized it just kept leading to frustration and a lack of fulfillment. You know, I'm a believer. I mean, I see God as the giver of all good things, but I just felt like I was trying to be in control of this and I was failing every day. And what I realized was it was the journey. It was setting the goals. It was being strategic, and even doing a job I didn't always like, but not thinking that I was trapped in my current situation, that my current situation was a step to where I wanted to go. And so what I would tell people is, unless you know exactly what it is that you want, at least a ballpark, then everything you read, everything you watch, everything you consume is going to drift you over somewhere else. And so while you're thinking you're making progress, you're actually going sideways, left or right, and you're not making any momentum for you. You know, one of the things that I learned along the way was that there are many, many, many good opportunities, but there's very, very few great opportunities. And even sometimes the great ones. There have been businesses I bought over the years were based on paper, based on advice of well-respected people. It was a good opportunity. And the moment I bought in, all hell broke loose. And now you just have to take a great opportunity that just became a terrible opportunity and make it into a great opportunity, because now you're in the arena and you've got to make stuff happen. So one of the things I find is if you can set goals and then monthly review with the person you love the most. Could be your spouse, it could be the person you're dating right now, a good friend, but having someone that's going to ask you the questions to make sure you're on track for what it is that you want. And I say this, and you can test me on this, and I believe you'll find this to be true. In the absence of you having a plan for your life and culture, more importantly, has a plan for you, and it's likely not going to get you where you want to go as quickly as possible.
This is interesting because I always speak with a good buddy of mine, Ryan Williams, in the deep end, and talking all things investing there. And something that we actually get asked quite frequently comes down to something that you just mentioned, which is this circle that's around you. Who's around you? What eyes are watching you? And are they keeping you accountable? If they're not, what do you do? So I've given my 2 cents on this a bunch on my channel and sharing that. But I'm curious from your standpoint, if you don't have the money mindset individuals around you, what do you do then? Do you, let's say you're in a relationship and your partner isn't that great with money. Let's say your friends are, instead of propping you up and pushing you forward when it comes to, say, saving a nickel or two, they're saying, oh, look at Ari, he's so cheap. We all have those individuals in the mix. So what do we do then?
So let me answer that by telling you a story that pops into my mind here. That there was a woman who was a longtime client, and she was frustrated because she kept getting overlooked for the raises that she knew she was deserving. And so I brought her into the office. She said, Derrick, I just need help with this. What's happening? And so we began to unpack a lot of her bad money beliefs that she had held since she was like 7 years old. So she recalled that she overheard a phone call that her dad received. Her dad had gone to the store to buy school supplies for she and her sister, and her dad had accidentally bounced a check. And the store owner called and said, I'm going to call the cops and have them come over to your house and arrest you because I know you did this on purpose. I know you bounced that check. And so this woman, who was now in her late 50s, on the outside, the picture of success, but on the inside, she's this wilting flower, overheard that and believed that if you make a financial mistake, you bounce a check, well, then you're a financial failure. So she grew up, in this entire time in my probably 10-year relationship with her, she rarely ever took my advice, and it cost her. It would have helped her make a lot more money, but it also was holding her back on her job. And so when I brought her into the office and we began to unpack this, all these bad money beliefs began to spill out. And she began to realize, oh my gosh, I'm the one holding myself back by believing my past is true. And I said, yeah, your past has passed. That's in the rear view now. All that matters is what's in the windshield looking forward. And within a short amount of time, about 90 days, she got a $25,000 raise and got promoted to vice president. And all because she was the same woman on the outside, but she was reborn on the inside. You see, her bad money beliefs, we toss those out the window and replace those with, no, that was my past. I am not that person. Now I've learned from that. And so one of the things I would tell people is, whether you feel like you're good with money, not good with money, starting today, think of yourself as the CEO of your life and of your money. And so to Ari's question, if you don't have the people around you naturally who are holding you accountable and have the same system, this is where, and this is what I like this has helped me a lot. It may be an unpopular opinion, but I call it the pay to play program. And that is, find a mentor that has a course. find a mastermind that you can be a part of. Find an event you can go to every quarter to be around and be in the room of like-minded people who will encourage you and motivate you. Even if your immediate circle is not in that boat, other people are. And when you go to these events, I always find it's best to sit in the first 3 rows of any event because that's where the most hungry, high-achieving people are. When I spoke at FinCon, where was Ari sitting? Row number 1. We all practice what we preach. And I suspect when you were at Blossom on that wonderful panel, the people on the first 3 rows, they're the hungriest. That's where the biggest relationships are, in the front of the room. So if you go to the back, you're already missing out.
It's funny you say that. After the panel here in Blossom, the Blossom tour, there were a couple folks who came up to me and they were asking me like, how do you do it? How do you become successful? And I said, well, it's really simple. Sometimes you just got to look at your schedule. And I said, how much room is in your schedule that you can actually start working in things that you really passionately enjoy doing and working towards those goals, which is what you're saying. It brings me back to grade school, right? It's like, did you sit in the front of the classroom or were you in the back slacking off? Derrick, I'm curious to get your standpoint when it comes to like the top 2 or 3 bad money mistakes or bad money habits that people generally have.
Well, one of the things, and I talk about this in my book, this is personal to me because as I would work with people who on the outside had this hunger mentality, they're known as high achieving people, they're professionals, they're people respect, like the people, watching us right now. But on the inside, they feel like something's missing. Like I'm not operating this engine at the fullest level. I'm missing my potential. There's something that I'm not doing that's frustrating me. And so for those people, what I find is when you go back in their lives, sometimes there was a voice. It was a well-meaning voice, but it might have been a mom or a dad that would bang their fist on the table and say, if only we had more money, then we could have the life we want. Money is the problem. And so money in this story becomes the villain. That if you have money, you're great, but if you don't have it, you're bad. And so therefore, money is the bad person here. Or someone might say, and this really bothers me. Even telling you this example bothers me, to be candid with you. When someone tells someone, especially when they're younger, in life, there's the haves and the have-nots. And unfortunately for us, our family is part of the have-nots. So you're probably never going to make much money. You're probably going to be stuck here. You're not going to have every opportunity everybody else has. And when you're a young person and someone you respect who's older, a mom or a dad, a grandmother, grandfather says that, you accept it. And it's like it gets dropped into your body and it gets stitched in. And you grow up believing that. And that's one I come against really, really hard. One of the things I find is that your past is past. I say that a lot. And one of the things I find is if you're going to be successful in life, realize that problems are part of life. There was a study done that I saw recently that talked about, a psychologist revealed that the average person, Ari, has 3 to 4 crises per year. So if you're average, you're either going into a crisis or you're coming out of one just on a consistent basis, interrupted by the occasional emergency, which means the AC went out, I've got a family member who's sick, I've got a job issue, I've got to worry. And so when you begin to accept the fact that, oh, that's how life is, there's always going to be problems coming my way. The game I'm playing is, how do I not let those problems derail me? Well, suddenly now you have dramatically positioned yourself for success. There was a young couple in a home group that my wife and I were in when we were first married. And we would go around the room. We were young couples, no kids, and talk about our jobs and how we wanted to have kids in our lives and this kind of thing. And there was one couple that would always say, once we get past this, then it's going to get better. Once we get over this, then we'll be able to do that. And years later, I realized that was the problem. It was like they had this bag of dog poop hanging over their heads. that could just pop at any moment. And what they thought was that once my life clears out of all the bad stuff, then I can achieve success. And what I realized was, no, 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 no. The successful people, the more successful you are, the more driven you are, the more goals you set, that just means the dial gets turned up for the pace and the number of problems that you will encounter. And know that when they're coming to you, that's a good thing, because that means you are doing something that other people aren't. You're trying new things and you're making bold moves. And so when you accept that and embrace that, well, suddenly now you can make progress a lot quicker because it doesn't derail you and knock you off track every time a problem comes your way.
Love this conversation. Just yesterday, I spoke with someone, and I say this all the time, by the way, Derrick, become the CEO, forget a business, the CEO of your life.
Yes.
I always say that because when you're the CEO, you act a little bit differently. And not only that, but you're not only a visionary, to your point here, you're a problem solver. People come to you and look to you to solve problems. Stepping into the CEO role of Derrick Kinney or Ari Gutman or whoever out there is watching, what would be the one or two things that you would suggest that they do off the cuff that they can immediately start to feel this power, if you will, of stepping into that role of a CEO?
Well, you think about, what does a CEO do? You know, the smartest CEOs, first of all, realize they are not the smartest in the room. Okay. So lesson for all of our new investors would be, accept the fact that you are not the smartest in the room, nor do you have to be. Let the weight leave your shoulders. You don't have to study every single point and read every word of the prospectus. You just need to take action on what things will help you achieve your goals. Okay. So that's number one. Number two is rely on the experts. One thing that smart CEOs do is they put smarter people in the room in all the areas they are not smart at. So don't let analysis by paralysis hold you back. Well, I've got to understand all this. We've got to watch it for a couple years. I've got to procrastinate. No, just take action. And sometimes a small action is much better than no action. You know, for example, one of my favorites, I love the S&P 500 index. I love the story. I love the fact that here's the top 500 companies, the brightest men and women heavily incentivized to grow their companies. And the average investor, the rookie investor with no knowledge, can simply make one trade and put money in to all 500 companies and have access to these 500 minds is so doggone powerful. And get this, statistically, about 90% of professional fund managers never exceed the S&P 500. So what that means is it's like the secret code for new investors to say, look, I'm just going to go into these investments that make it easy. I don't have to overthink it. And the goal is, and if I would leave you with one central idea, Ari, it'd be this. Remember, your goal is not to become the financial expert. Your goal is to be the expert in making the most money, solving the most problems, adding the most value where you're at. You see, your biggest lever is how, not can I make my money make more money? It's how can you earn more money? We're going to take the lid off of your income. We're going to replace that with a sunroof, and we're going to let more income opportunities come in. You see, income is really the biggest lever that you've got for long-term growth.
What would you say to the investors who are watching this right now and saying that S&P 500, it's great, but there's also these growth stocks that look like they're going to 10 or 20x way faster than the S&P?
Well, one of the things I talk about in my book, I call it the 4 lanes of investing. Okay. And lane 3, by the way, lanes 1 and 2, checking, savings, more conservative things. Lane 3 is that longer term retirement where I like things like the S&P. And again, that's not the end all be all, but it's one of the things I like just because the story is so compelling. You could say that about the NASDAQ or some other things. But lane 4 on a highway is typically the fast lane. Okay. That's where people get the most speeding tickets. They have the most accidents. I call that the speculative lane. Okay. So I think it's very, very important, almost required, in my opinion, this is Derrick speaking, to have some money in speculative things. For example, that might be for you, it might be Bitcoin, it might be Ethereum, it might be some other random investment that you've heard about, because I want you to have, number one, cool stories to tell at the cocktail party. That's very, very important. Okay. But also, it lets you kick the tires. You see, when clients put a little bit of money in something like these other speculative investments, high growth areas, and they lose it, for example, it doesn't impact their entire portfolio. But if they never put money there, they always wonder what could have happened. So I always position that as we're going to put intentionally some money in lane 4. And in days or months where it does really well, you're going to say to yourself, Derrick, what are you doing? I'm making so much money over here. But I'm going to say, look, there's going to be times where things may drop off. We want to have a balanced perspective. So I would just encourage people that like lane 4, follow consumer behavior. It's one of the best ways to make money. The trends right now, whether it be AI, health related, there's a lot of different pieces out there that people can make money. But the key is having a plan and not going from one thing to the next to the next. We talked earlier about going from left to right and not really going forward. You've got to have a plan that's best for you and your goals. Ultimately, that's the key.
What would be the healthiest split, you would say? If you wanted to play it, I guess safe, it's the S&P. It's very simple. But if you did want to add some of those speculative opportunities, how much should you add? I mean, when people are starting off and building out their portfolios, what's even a good foundational amount to throw into the S&P before they begin to invest into an individual stock?
Well, so let's take a look at this kind of categorically, and not to get too complicated here, but let's say a person watching has a 401k where you're going to have preset options in the 401k or the 403b typically. So I tend to like, typically the longer the person's time frame, the more aggressive or growth oriented I like to be with how that money is invested. Okay, so that tends to be then something like the S&P is more that I call it like a core and satellite. The S&P is like the core, and then the satellites can be international, some income producing, the NASDAQ, these other types of areas here, individual stocks, if you like those as well, those can do very, very well. And so the key is being diversified there. But in terms of that lane 4, personally, I tend to be a more growth-oriented, I would say more speculative, risk-taking investor. So 5 to 10% over here. Now let me tell you a couple real quick stories. All right. So one of the ways that I became a millionaire, the first way that I became an investment millionaire, is I bought Visa the day that it went public. So I had 10 of my clients and I reached out to them and said, hey, this could be speculative, but the track record was there. Visa had been around a while, hadn't gone public yet. And so they each decided how much money they wanted to put in. I chose to put in $100,000. So I always made my trades last out of ethics and doing what's right for the client as a fiduciary. So made their trades the moment that it went public. And then within a couple of years, actually, it may have been 7, 8 years, that 100,000 grew to $1 million inside my IRA. So it was all tax deferred. And I also used that same strategy when Chipotle went public, Google went public. It was a Dutch auction. It hung out at like $78 a share for about an hour. It was crazy. We bought into that. So there are several things there where you have to look and say, odds are this could do very, very well because there is a track record already established, the name recognition. So some would question, say, Derrick, that was so speculative. To me, that was the easiest decision to buy those stocks because I followed consumer behavior. Okay. So I would just ask, and even a simple way to invest is, what are the products and services that you enjoy using right now? It's the same question I ask when I teach the business club at our local high school. Hey, what brand of shirt? What brand of shoes? What brand of phone? What apps do you like to go on when you get home? What food do you like to eat? Because if you like those products, and I ask them the question, do you think other people all around the world like those exact same products too? All the hands go up. So again, this is not about being overly complex, but what I would do is if you want to go into more speculative things, pick a percentage and just call that your working capital fund, and then use that to buy stuff, sell that, whatever you want to do. But know that the rest of the account, you've got some balance there so that you're not worried every day about losing everything from Monday to Tuesday.
Such solid advice. I mean, it really is. Derrick, I want to ask you one last question here to leave us all with something profound. If you had to give one message to each and every one of us, from beginner to novice to more experienced investors, just given all your experience as an investor, as a financial advisor, and everything you've been doing in life.
Boy, that's such a powerful question. It's almost like, what would you want the last thing you ever say on earth to be? There are a couple things. I mean, as a believer, I know how the story ends. And so it encourages me to take risks and be bold and be courageous every day because I know how the story ends. We get one life, and I want to make sure I'm doing everything so that every day I'm proud of myself. My dad, though, told me, my dad was actually very risk averse. But it's funny how someone who's very, very risk averse can actually encourage someone to be more risk taking. And he said, Derrick, nothing ventured, nothing gained. Nothing ventured, nothing gained. And I think about that, and it came from the voice of a man who wanted to take more risks but didn't. But it reminds me every day that wasn't the path for me. I've got to make my own path. And another thing I like to say to myself is that my time is now, and I am ready.
Powerful. Investors, like I said, a bunch of links are going to be down there in the pinned comment in the description. Derrick truly is one of a kind. Good Money Revolution, by the way, will be a book that we're going to start a book club with. And so Derrick will be joining us again. But Derrick, I want to thank you truly from the bottom of my heart for joining me on Masters of the Market. I'm sure we have all taken a lot away from this one. Everything you need to know before you even hit buy in a brokerage account. And investors, until the next go round of Masters of the Market, we will catch you all there.